Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. It's Connor back here with your morning live stream. Hope you're all doing really well, as we just mentioned. Please make sure you're slapping a like on the video. Make sure you comment in your thoughts, as always. And are you subscribed? If you are not subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that notification bell, and you'll be alerted every time we upload here at One Leeds HQ. What is going on, everybody? What are you doing on your Friday? What is going on? Big weekend ahead, huge weekend ahead, and we don't need to go into that, but blooming heck, it's a big weekend for this country, isn't it? Listen, we're going to be speaking about Joe Rothwell today. Why? Because I want to really get into why I think this is a really good signing for Leeds United and why this aids our promotion hopes. Am I going to be coming on here and speaking about rumours today? Unlikely. I want to just really delve into the actual signing that we've managed to get in, because that's what we've all been waiting for. I know we're all like, more, as one famous Gallagher once said, but I want to also really get into this signing, and I want to get into the meat of why I think it's a really top signing at this level, and I really do, and I'm really happy with it. I want to give you guys a little bit of my insight into why I think Joe Rothwell is a decent sign. I mentioned on Twitter, this isn't some South American wonder kid who nobody has heard of. This is a guy who's had over 300 appearances in the football pyramid. This is a guy who's had 168 appearances at championship level. It isn't some sort of nobody. It is a very well-known, established player at this level. So before we start, I'll just get into a few of your comments. Morning, Connie, you big, beautiful. Joe's a smart signing with no risk. Morning, Connor. Super Joe, spot on. Football gurus in the building. Hiya, mate. Rare treats, catch you live. Shout out to you, Sledge Havoc as well. Morning, Con. Can't see the dissatisfaction with this signing. We need depth, but more importantly, goals from midfield. Jay says, morning, pal. Very happy with the Rothwell signing. Experience box-to-box midfield that can take a set piece and drives forward with the ball. Something we were definitely missing last season. Rob Arthur is in the building as well. Yeah, and let's get into it. And look, what I don't want to do is come on here and say every single Leeds fan is saying all negative things, because I think, listen, we went into that sort of mire when it came to the 49ers and Red Bull and all this sort of stuff. Listen, the majority of Leeds fans are really, satisfied with this sign. I'm not going to say overjoyed, but satisfied with this signing. But there has been grumblings from a more significant portion of the fan base than I expected with this sign. And I thought there'd be sort of a general appreciation of it, really. And we've not seen him put on a Leeds shirt yet. Of course, we haven't. We haven't really seen him, have a season at Championship level recently. Of course, well, more recent than we'd have thought. You thought we'd have maybe been bringing in a midfielder who last season had X amount of Championship experiences. That's not happened. So let's get into why, and let's get into the disgruntlement with some fans. Some fans aren't happy with it. They're a little bit underwhelmed by it. Now, what I would say about his career, and I'm going to try go about it in a reasonably chronological way. I will be reverting back to Blackburn at the end, but he did move to Bournemouth in 2022. Now, what I found really startling with him moving in 2022 is I thought he was at Bournemouth a little bit longer than that. I think he's been there around about 3 seasons now. 2 to 3 seasons, and he's amassed around about 40 appearances for Bournemouth in that period, which, when you look at the style of midfielder that Joe Rothwell is, which is a progressive midfielder, someone who will break the lines, okay? And we're going to get into why that is really important in this Leeds United side, but he's really going to aid us in transition. Now, if you look at that Bournemouth side, Romain Favre, who we were interested in all those years ago when we were in the Premier League, Marcondes, Phil Billing, and Alex Scott. Obviously, Alex Scott has been there recently. Favre, probably one of the most recent ones as well, and Marcondes. However, those are 4 midfielders at Bournemouth who play a very similar way to Joe Rothwell in terms of breaking the lines centrally. That is mad competition. And the reason I want to bring this up is because obviously Rothwell will be the oldest of that bunch as well. And people will probably be thinking, well, why hasn't he played, Connor? Why isn't he playing regularly for Bournemouth in the Premier League? That is why, because central midfield is the most important position on the pitch, in my opinion. It's the engine, it's the brain of any football team. And when you've got players like that available at your disposal in the Premier League, of which Bournemouth just seem to be adding more and more and more and more every single year. Different managers have been coming in with different ideas. Obviously, the most recent one being Andoni Iraola. Listen, it's going to be really, really hard for Joe Rothwell to break into that mold, especially when you were signed before Iraola came in and you don't really fit his blueprint. So I think that's something to take into consideration. 40 appearances within the amount of time that he's been there as well. Seeing as though Bournemouth have also been a Premier League side, I think that's pretty decent, to be quite honest with you. Now, the major talking point is when he moved to Southampton. Now, this has been a lot of controversy, and I think sometimes the frustrating side of it is people nowadays just go and look at numbers, of which it's quite ironic because his numbers in a fraction of the games that he played for Southampton last year, and there's so much context to be applied here, everybody, but he's better than any of our midfielders combined in terms of where Rothwell is going to benefit Leeds this season, which is going forward. Now, if you had to look at FBref or any analytical database going forward, you will see that on the attacking side of things, the offensive side of things, he outweighs every single Leeds United midfielder. Every single Leeds United midfielder. And also, he has played in defensive midfield several times in his career. He's played on the left, he's played on the right. Versatility is a Swiss Army knife in that midfield with bags full of experience. So when he moved to Southampton, it was interesting, really, because Southampton didn't have a settled midfield as such at that point. It was a little bit of chopping and changing. Obviously, there was Flynn Downs, there was Joe Aribo. Aribo hadn't really hit the heights that we saw him hit towards the back end of the season, and probably similar with Smallbone, really. However, that midfield dynamic was so strong, way stronger than ours, and the depth was way stronger than ours as well. This is a Southampton side who had managed to really, really do well in terms of keeping hold of many key players. They got, obviously, they sold notable ones in terms of Ward Prowse. They sold notable ones in terms of, obviously, Romeo Lavia as well. But on the general spectrum of it, Southampton kept hold of a lot of very, very decent players. Joe Aribo being one, Stu Armstrong being another, Adam Armstrong, Shea Adams, lots of players they were able to keep hold of. And I think that what was interesting about the Joe Rothwell move that Southampton made in January is, did they really need him? That's the question. Did they really need him when you have midfield options like they had? Now, the thing with Russell Martin is what he tried to do was fluctuate his formation, right? So at points he would have a 4-3-3. At points towards the back end of the season, it would be a 3-5-2, of which Leeds just couldn't compete. Leeds were struggling massively against Southampton, whatever the formation, of course. But the thing is, what Martin does is change. That can be midfield 3, it can be midfield 5, of which Walker Peters, would join into that central midfield space as well and be a little bit more inverted. But the whole point here is everybody, even when it was a five in the middle as such, but you'd have two wing backs or a three, a more obvious number three in the midfield as a 4-3-3. There is no way I thought when Rothwell joined that he was going to break up a small bone, Aribo, and Downs midfield, just on the basis that that's a Premier League midfield. It really is a Premier League midfield. And the big one in there was Aribo, who he maybe would have been able to displace. But the thing is, when you look at Joe Aribo, he's probably way more athletic. He's leggy and he's probably a little bit more physical, and obviously he's taller. So that's going to aid him in terms of being sort of an option above Rothwell, and he's older as well. Rothwell's a lot older than Aribo as well, which maybe dampens that sort of those legs in the midfield. So when we're looking at Aribo and we're looking at Smallbone, they were two players of which you look at Rothwell and think, right, you could displace one of those two. Smallbone, it was always going to be hard because not only is he a quality operator at championship level, but he is a local lad. He was an academy product. Joe Aribo was signed, obviously, from Rangers. Very recently had Premier League minutes, and as I've just mentioned, had some attributes which I can see why Russell Martin favoured them ahead of Joe Rothwell. I think the really interesting thing here when you're looking at Russell Martin is the comments he made about Joe Rothwell. He said he's an unbelievable finisher. Now, obviously, he scored 4 times in 16 for Southampton last season, a goal of the season as well, which was against Huddersfield, which was an insane volley. And listen, he's an excellent striker of the ball. But Martin said, which I think is a really, really good thing. I remember when I was playing, if people hated playing against me, I knew I'd done my job. I really knew I'd done my job in that central midfield space. And Russell Martin said, player or when he was a manager, he hated coming up against Joe Rothwell. And you would suggest that that's why they got him in, because he was available. It's a depth option, and it's someone who could definitely push Joe Aribo and Will Smallbone. And you did see, once again, Will Smallbone going to another level at the end of the season, of which we all know is happened against Leeds United, and he was uncontrollable, really, in certain games in that division. So Rothwell pushed him. I watched the Bristol City game, and I remember Rothwell being in the midfield there. They lost Southampton that game. I remember it was a pivotal one for Leeds, but Rothwell was just excellent. And that's only the real minutes, I have to be honest, that I've watched Joe Rothwell for a sustained period last season. But from reports, he was really unlucky not to get more starts. And just with the competition in the midfield, that was the whole issue here. So when we're looking at a ball progressor, which Rothwell is, Bournemouth, you've got Billing, Marcondes, Favre, Alex Scott. And when you're looking at progressive runners and ball progressions, when you're looking at Southampton, just in comparison as well to Bournemouth, he's got mad competition as well there. Huge competition. So I feel like within this Leeds United field, there isn't really anyone who does what Joe Rothwell does. And there's a lot of people who are talking about Archie Gray. Archie Gray isn't Joe Rothwell. Completely different. This is Archie Gray's replacement. No, it's not. Archie Gray also played 99%, 95% of the season last year at right back. This is a completely separate addition for me. But yeah, I think the key thing to know is in 16 appearances, he got more goals than any of our midfield combined. So I think as Leeds United fans, we have to look at that as a platform in the side. It's a progression. It's you are uplifting the side. You are making the side better in its deficiency, which is scoring goals from that midfield. Now, a lot of people have been saying, Connor, is he going to come in as a number 10? No, I don't think so. I think he's going to be a bit of a line breaker from the double pivot. Now, the difference is Martin favoured a 4-3-3. He moved into, I should say, a 3-5-2 as well. So it's going to be a little bit different. It is going to be a little bit different. But at Bournemouth, he has played in a 4-2-3-1, Joe Rothwell. And I think he's going to be part of a double pivot that will break the line. The problem is we've seen Glenn Kamara do that, but Glenn Kamara has mad deficiencies when it comes to his attacking output. We all know that he's tidy in the attacking third, 100%, but he's nowhere near good enough from a progression aspect in terms of getting involved in offensive play. It's not good enough in terms of his output, in my personal opinion. But yeah, we don't have a small bone. We don't have an Aribo. We don't have players like that. We have Gruev and we have Kamara who impact Leeds in offensive actions almost null. We saw Gruev score an excellent free kick set piece against Norwich, but open play, it doesn't happen. It really, really doesn't happen. So shout out to you, Stevie, as well, becoming a member. Helen says very smart signing, really, really happy. That's good, Helen. I'm happy. You guys smash a like on the video as well. Would really, really appreciate that. Okay, so in terms of where else he's gonna help Leeds, and it's not just progression. It's not. He has played in defensive midfield previously in his career. He's done it with Blackburn, and we're going to get onto Blackburn in just a little bit. But he's also had experience there, you know, for Bournemouth as well. We keep talking about centre back options, right? We're all talking about it. Centre back, centre back, centre back, centre back. Now, this isn't what I want to happen, but the huge benefit of this signing is it gives us a little bit more. We can maneuver a little bit more when it comes to those defensive actions. If Ampadu is, touch wood, he doesn't, but if Ampadu has to go into a back two again this year, or maybe even a back three, Verber's there, oh my God, the options are going to be great. But worst case scenario, Ethan Ampadu has to go into a back two again. Okay, Strout gets injured. You know, we don't keep hold of Verber. We don't get another centre back, whatever. Joe Rothwell, 100% can move into defensive midfield. And I think, if I'm being honest with you guys, that was a major reason that Russell Martin brought him in at Southampton as well. It was cover for Flynn Downs. Okay, Flynn Downs, an unbelievable operator on loan from West Ham. Literally one of the best players I've seen at championship level in midfield. What a baller he was. So strong, so progressive, such a football brain. And I think Rothwell not only was brought in for competition with Smallbone and Rebo, but also that covering option for Flynn Downs if he was to be out. Okay. So, and against Bristol City, ironically, the game that I watched, you did see him take up more of a defensive midfield position in terms of, and maybe that hindered Southampton in that game. They obviously lost in terms of, you know, losing that progression, but also losing Flynn Downs in there, such a massive impact. But yeah, I think if Ampadu is to leave at any point, that defensive midfield, whether or not it's injury or whether or not it's centre back, he can definitely be used as cover. Now, going forward is where we're going to see a lot more of Joe Rothwell. Okay, going forward is where we're going to see a lot more of him breaking those lines. Blackburn, he was so good at doing that. Everybody, Tony Mowbray, and I was going to get onto this at the very end of the video, but Tony Mowbray said that the world was at his feet. He needs to this was 27 years of age, 26, 27 years of age. Joe Rothwell said the world was at his feet. Blackburn not bad back, so many bids for him. Guys, this was in like 2022. It's not even that long ago. It's not even that long ago. We're not talking about a guy who, you know, words was being spoken about him when he was 22 and he hasn't fulfilled his potential. He has fulfilled his potential. Maybe not to that ridiculous level that Tony Mowbray was talking about, but this is the potential that the lad has. And I don't think he had that open goal, that space at Bournemouth and Southampton to really galvanise and be you know, himself as much in that position, because there was so much competition. And did he really have a chance at Bournemouth? Properly, probably not. A chance at Southampton? Probably not. He's going to have that chance at Leeds because we don't have any profiles like Joe Rothwell. The other two, there's arguments that they had profiles. So another thing that I'm trying to look at when it comes to Rothwell is who's the attacker. So at Blackburn, he had Adam Armstrong. And when he was brought in at Southampton, I think there was also a notion that when he played as that progressive central midfielder, he'd really link up well with Adam Armstrong. Him and Adam Armstrong at Blackburn were lethal. At phases. They've played before. They're friends. And you do look at maybe that Southampton link and think that's why he was brought in as well, because there's a little bit of a link there with Adam Armstrong. Could that have been helped in certain games? Yes. So I've had a quick look at the profiles at Leeds, and there's one man who stands out massively in terms of if Joe Rothwell is to play. It's Matteo Joseph. Okay, playing on the last line of the defense consistently, always on that offside line. Main attribute is his pace and his agility over 5 yards. His physicality is excellent when it comes to, obviously, the centre-backs in this division. We saw that this season, even with his little bit of cameos. And splitting the centre-back and the full-back is what Matteo Joseph, even with the brief elements that we've seen of him, the brief cameos, I'll say again, that we've seen of him, is exactly what he's about, okay? Joe Rothwell, I think, and Matteo Joseph is a perfect link. Rothwell getting hold of the ball, just slotting the ball between those lines, the centre-back and the full-back. Matteo Joseph always occupies that position. Think Michael Owen, 98, 99. And listen, that is a perfect option, in my opinion, for him. The problem is it's going to be if he starts Peru. If Peru is a number 10, once again, like we've probably seen a little bit with Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham, they're going to get in each other's way because Rothwell's going to occupy that position, or he's going to try and occupy that position going forward. But we're going to see that in a 4-2-3-1 anyway, if the number 10 and Rothwell sort of collide. But they've got to, maybe work as 2-8s or 2-10s in possession. So yeah, we've got to be really, really careful with who we start up front. And you've got to look at the profiles that Rothwell's worked with before and has been successful with before in breaking those lines and being a progressive runner and a progressive deep line midfielder. That is Adam Armstrong. So the profile that is going to be massively aided, in my opinion, by Rothwell, and who we've got to start this season is Matteo Joseph. So yeah, we've mentioned the fact that he's on his record, it's not too bad. Some of the stats to throw at you guys. Last season for Southampton, he created 1.73 chances per 90, which is way ahead of Kamara and way ahead of Gruev, of course. He had a 70% tackle success rate, which just shows it's not only going forward, but in that defensive midfield position as well. He could be really, successful and aid Leeds in that respect if Ampadu wasn't there. And even in just a general midfield space, if he's part of a double pivot, that's going to be massively successful. And a 62% dribble success rate, everybody, which just in comparison to any other double pivot midfielders who are what they are at Leeds, you're probably not going to get that. Kamara is a good dribbler. He's press resistant. I would say Joe Rothwell's press resistant as well, which is a massive attribute. But what do you get at the end of Kamara? You don't really get enough when it comes to output. At least when Rothwell's trying to dribble beyond the man, you're going to get probably a little bit of success when it comes to output. So, and the things that we can't measure, everybody, is what Farke wanted. He wanted experience. He was speaking about Morsi. He was speaking about Luongo in terms of at the back end of the season, them knowing how to deviate and meticulously get through certain games with their experience. You're not going to get more experience than Joe Rothwell at this level. Over 300 games in the English pyramid, nearly 200 games at championship level and 29 years of age. And once again, I'll bring you back to that Mowbray comment of him saying the sky is the limit. I'm just going to get into a few of your comments, everybody. That's been my brief, really, when it comes to Joe Rothwell. I think Southampton saw a replacement for Alcaraz when he went to Juventus on loan, and as Con explains, he's not a 10. Yeah, and he also says excellent analysis, Con. This is an area where you excel, in my opinion. Thanks, Football Guru. Yeah, I don't do this enough. I used to love doing this when Leeds would bring in profiles. I think the research is key. Just because as well, there's people, I've got no 33,000 subscribers. Some of you won't know who Joe Rothwell is. You won't have ever seen Joe Rothwell, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. There's football players who I don't know anything of, and I'll need to go and do a little bit of research, but I'll try to do that for you guys. Joe Rothwell is a name who, I've been aware of since he was at Blackburn, just because there has been so much hype around him when he was at Blackburn. It was one of those moves when he went to Bournemouth where you're like, what a signing, what an unbelievable sign. Really similar to when Bournemouth struck an agreement with Bristol City for Alex Scott. It was one of those where you went, ooh, you really took note. And it was one of those Bournemouth signings where you're thinking, yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. So, listen, hopefully that's a little bit of an understanding on where he'll fit there. The majority of Southampton points came before he joined. What do you mean there, mate? Let me know. Josh says, good to catch you live, Con. Just knocked off work, having a pint. Good man. Football Guru says, again, I think Rothwell signing is further proof how data-driven our recruitment model is. Solid work from the 49ers. Again, yeah, and that's it, everyone. That's it. When you're looking at this data model, of which they are using now, facts, they are using that, Leeds United. You've got to look at where the deficiencies in the squad are. Is Gruev a progressive runner? No. Is Kamara a progressive runner? To an extent. But where are the other progressive runners in the squad? Out wide. So centrally, do we have any real progressive runners? Do we have any transitional demons where they're going to be able to bring Leeds up the pitch? Well, we do in Rutter, but do you really want a number 10 or an attacker picking the ball up on the edge of RD and marauding forward? Of course you don't. You don't need that. So what do you need? You need one of your double pivot doing that, who are already taking up positions in a defensive aspect and can maraud through that central space, strong on the ball and progressive runners, which then enables Jorginho Rutter to do what Jorginho Rutter does and occupy certain pockets in offensive spots and really pick apart the other side. Someone like Joe Rothwell helps other players as well. What we've got to see, everybody. That's what we've got to understand here. Rothwell bringing that ball out from deep, bringing it into those central spaces and the attacking midfield spaces. And threading those balls through. We've just mentioned the progressive balls, of which he will constantly do. All we're moaning about last year was Leeds going side to side. We bring someone in who's a progressive passer and still we're moaning. It makes no sense. This data-driven model is definitely helping Leeds when it comes to deficiencies, in my opinion, or will do going forward. You can't really say that as of right now because we've not got enough of a sample size, but getting Joe Rodon back for a starter and then bringing Joe Rothwell in, of which nobody knew anything about, I think is really progressive, using that term again. Any more news, Connor? Nothing yet, mate. Nothing yet. Dave says, I think Rothwell's a nice signing, not afraid to have a pop at goal and will take the ball forward. Good experience. The thing is, everyone, as well, I think what we've got to look at is it's a loan. Worst case scenario, we send him back. And we might even get another midfielder as well, which I think we might do, you know? So that's how you got to look at it. Don't be too downbeat about it. Be a little bit excited about this one, in my opinion. That's my thoughts anyway. You might disagree. But I've just tried to come at you with a little bit of things behind the scenes. Excellent player at Blackburn, was one of the players everybody was looking at. Joe Rothwell, about 3 or 4 years ago, top player at championship level, bags full of experience. And as I've said before, everybody, there's things that you can take away from the Southampton loan. The fact that he still made a big impact in a small period. The fact that those things that you can't really extrinsically measure. Did he push Smallbone on? Did he push Aribo on to a little bit of another level in that latter half of the season because Rothwell was there? Poor performances from them, and he's straight in there. He had a lot of competition, a lot of similar profiles, As we've spoken about, Marcondes, Billing, Favre, many more at Bournemouth. Then you look at Southampton, Aribo and Smallbone, who were just not being displaced by Martin. Real favourites for him. At Leeds, we don't have anyone like that. No one. So he's going to get more of a chance, much more of a chance. And I see this is a really upside signing. Guys, before we leave, if you enjoyed this video, please slap a like on it. You're going to come back to this at various points in the day, I'm sure. But yeah, let me know what you think on Joe Rothwell. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you underwhelmed? Are you happy with it? As I always say, football's subjective. We can agree, we can disagree, but it is subjective. Of course it is. I understand that someone's opinion might be different to mine, of course. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll see you on the other side. There might be another video out today. We'll wait and see. Have a good one, and I'll see you in a bit. Cheers.